meeting of the Executive. I will now read out the emergency evacuation announcements. There are no planned fire drills, so if the alarm activates, please leave the building in an orderly fashion via your nearest fire exit. Please use either the fire exit through the main doors of the hall or the fire exit in the storeroom adjacent to the stage. The fire assembly point is the island in front of the main entrance to the building. Please do not delay your evacuation to collect any belongings. Please do not return to the building until given permission to do so by council staff. Please note that the meeting will be live streamed. Please switch off mobiles or turn them to silent. Toilets and hand washing facilities are available in the foyer area.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, members, your voice will only be captured on the live stream when your microphone is switched on. So please remember to switch your microphone on when you're invited to speak and switch it off again when not speaking. Members, voting will be done on a show of hands in line with the Constitution. I will ask for a show of hands for and then against recommendations, and will also ask for a show of hands for those wishing to abstain from voting. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence. Apologies have been received from Councillor John Mason. Agenda item 2, non-members attending. We've got Councillor McPherson, Councillor FD, Councillor Sperring, Councillor Belton, Councillor Linden, Councillor Cross and Councillor Wootton. Have I missed anyone? No. Okay, thank you. Agenda item 3. Minutes of the meeting held on the 13th of July 2023. Members, are the minutes agreed? Thank you. Agenda item 4, to receive declarations of interest. Members, are there any declarations of interest? Councillor Stanley?
Member of RTC.
And I'm also a member of Reading Town Council.
For what item, please?
For item, what's it, 11, is it? 11? Item number 11.
Can I ask the nature of the interest, please, for both of you?
Is it non?
It's
Other.
other registered.
Oh, our other registrable interest. Chris, Councillor Stanley, what's the nature of your interest?
Being a member of Reading Town Council.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Stanley. Agenda item 5, questions on notice from councillors. Members, there are none. Agenda item 6, matters referred to the executive and reports from other committees. Members, there are 3 reports from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Item 6.1, One Team Transformation Programme, Strategic Partnership with Brentwood Borough Council, Q1 update. Councillor McPherson, can you please introduce the report?
Thank you, Chairman. The report has been with members of the executive. I'm sure if there are any questions, our Finance Director is here to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McPherson. Members, are there any questions? No. Okay, members, there is one recommendation at paragraph 1.3 on page 6.11 of the report to note the progress of the One Team Transformation Programme. Members, is this noted? Thank you. Item 6.2, cost of living payments. Councillor McPherson, could you introduce this report, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Members of the executive, at full council on the 21st of February, a recommendation was put forward that the Overview and Scrutiny Committee set up a time-limited working group to determine whether payment should be made to residents within the district affected by the cost of living crisis, including to whom, how, sources of funding and financial amounts. The recommendation that night was carried unanimously by members. The working group was formed by the overview and scrutiny meeting on the 5th of July. The working group met several times over the summer period. This included consulting with the third sector to gain their input. I would also like to thank Tim Willis, our Finance Director, for his input, and especially as when he came back from his holiday, he had a report from me that he turned around exceptionally quickly. The options considered were direct payments to residents based on the criteria to be decided. This was difficult to be administered due to any targeting would have taken a process of gathering the information which would have taken time and resources. It was also considered that if a payment was made to a range of residents, that was it of sufficient value to make a difference to them. There was also the reimbursement or awards to residents considered who move to private sector accommodation. Again, the time this would take to gather the information, the administration of such payments and the value of the grant would be nominal and as such have little impact. We also considered a specific scheme targeted at council taxpayers similar to one operated by another neighbouring council. From inquiries at the start of this process, the other council did explain that the uptake of this had been low. So again, we did not consider that. The fourth method that we looked at was a grant to be awarded to a suitable body that could provide experienced advice and signposting to residents to support them. This, it was decided, was the best option by the working group. It felt that these roadshow style events could reach a wider audience by being delivered pan the district. Pan district because our areas in our district and their need vary considerably. From the 2021 ONS, whilst we have reasonably affluent areas in the north of the district, in areas such as Rayleigh, there are who are in the 20 least income deprived areas. We also have at least one neighbourhood in our district, which is in the 20% most income deprived in the whole of England. It was felt that it should be branded as community events and actually start to lose the cost of living title, so to appeal to those who may feel that it is not for them. Our residents, for example, who are in the JAM group. JAM is an acronym for Just About Managing, because a lot of hard-working families are struggling with the cost of living, and this they are often quite close to real struggles, but count themselves out because they're not able to claim benefits. We also looked at where their partners, for example, I'm giving an example here, where someone recently bereaved, for example, where their partner perhaps managed the family finances and just needs some support. So we could reach a wider audience, we felt, with these roadshows, involve voluntary groups that have the experience of offering support. At the ONS Overview and Scrutiny meeting on the 13th of September, the report was presented by the working group. The Overview and Scrutiny Committee supported the two recommendations from the working group. These are before you tonight for the Executive Committee. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor McPherson. Members, are there any questions, please? Councillor Reeves.
Thank you, Chair. It seems on the face of it a very good idea. The one thing that I have a question about is how was the £7,000 allocation basically formulated? I see that it's from an underspend, but just because we've got it from an underspend doesn't mean to say that that is how we've actually looked at what that's, has it been looked at how that is going to be broken down and spent? It just seems a bit of an arbitrary figure, which I think is rather questionable at this sort of stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Tim, do you want to answer the questions at the end or now?
Thank you, Chair. The Chair of Overview and Scrutiny might be able to add, because in this particular instance, the proposals were formulated by the working group rather than designed by officers to present to members. These were actually the result of the working group to arrive at the number. But what I can say is there was a certain amount of negotiation around how much could be available. And this was a bit more than I originally suggested might be available from the underspend, but it now can be met from £7,000 and a bit less than the chair was originally suggesting that might be needed. So there was some, I'm sure that the chair of Overview Scrutiny will be able to explain how the figure was arrived at and the sort of things that it could do. But that wasn't within what I needed to do. I needed to find any funding to support whatever the recommendations might be coming forward to the Overview Scrutiny and then on to executive.
Thank you. Councillor McPherson, have you got anything to add?
Thank you, Chairman. As mentioned in the paper, we did consult with third sector. Now, there is a belief that the third sector comes free. They do not come free. It is their time to pull these sort of events together. Previous events have also perhaps had interventions, such as items that can help people who are on a low income, that they can provide for them. So we asked them what would be the baseline that they would need for this sort of event. And we are also thinking that moving forward, we don't know how long, you don't know how long the cost of living is going to last. But are we now horizon scanning, looking to the future and provide these on an annual basis, reaching out to our community? Post cost of living, could they then support us with things like social isolation in our communities? So that's why there is also the recommendation for the onward funding for future years. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McPherson. Councillor Stanley.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a couple of questions. How will the hardship, or how will this fund be, cost of living fund grant be made to residents in relation to other benefits that they receive? And how much would each person or each family receive from that grant? Thank you.
That was actually probably one of the suggestions that came forward. And as I mentioned, it was not followed up by the working group as an option for us due to the time it would take to administer when we think that we want to get this sort of support out there right away. Also the resources that we've got with our staff in managing that. And also then when it's broken down, how much impact would that financial amount have on those families? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor McPherson. Councillor Gooding.
Yeah, I'd just like to perhaps ask Tracy Lilly, the Director of Communities and Health, how this, if this was to be agreed, how it would be able to be managed and the process and the criteria involved with what is being suggested with the events that has been put forward, please.
Thank you, Councillor Gooding. Tracy Lilly, please.
Thank you, Chairman. It's a difficult one because I wasn't involved in the working group, so we have very limited resources within my directorate to be able to manage and award a grant scheme. So no criteria has been set, no process is in place. So it would take some thought to work out how we would best do that and get it to the right organisation. What organisations would bid? How would we get it out there? How would we invite? Did it go back to members? So there's a whole process that needs to be agreed behind the goodwill of allocating 7,000, which I can see the benefits to it, and I'm not against it, but it just needs to be considered on how we would deliver that across the district.
Thank you. Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to come in on the back of that, I believe Councillor Goodin and also our officer, Tracy Lilly, were at the overview and scrutiny meeting on the 5th of July. At that very meeting, there was a plea for funding for supporting the work of the Hub, which is based in the Megazone, which is already delivering these sort of events and reaching the communities that we're talking about. The turnaround on that was not mentioned at the time, but there was a plea for funding for supporting that sort of work. Thank you, Chairman.
Any other members wish to speak on this? No. Okay, members. So we've got two recommendations. I've listened closely to what Councillor Macpherson said, but also what the officer has said. And whilst I support all of the brilliant work that the Overview and Scrutiny have done putting this together, I do, at this moment, do have some reservations listening to the officer. So I would like to move from the chair that we defer this item to the next executive to give us longer to consider the implementation. Do I have a seconder for that?
I'll second. Well,
Councillor Eaves, second that.
Second that, yeah. Thank you.
Members, can I see a show of hands as to for that recommendation? Yep, that's unanimous, members. Thank you. Okay, members, this is agenda item 6.3, Highways Rangers. Councillor Macpherson, could you please introduce the report?
Thank you, Chairman. The report is in front of you. Just to give you an overview, in previous years, Essex County Council have funded Rochester District Council and 11 other district councils, a sum of, I believe, 70,000, although that may be slightly incorrect, it may be 80,000. Our officer Marcus Hotton can confirm. That was withdrawn last year. And Essex County Council were lobbied about this funding. It has still not materialised, they are not funding it. So we are at the moment delivering a service that our taxpayers pay Essex County Council for. We had a discussion at Overview and Scrutiny. It was quite a split discussion between whether we continue to deliver the service or not. I would like to thank Councillor Cross for putting together the report. What we did discuss at Overview and Scrutiny were the risks if we did not continue to provide this service, even though we are receiving no funding for it. And being a rural area, and some of the areas that our highway rangers clear at the moment are areas where there could be accidents, a high risk of perhaps children walking out on footpaths that are not maintained properly into the road, was too greater. Therefore, you have the recommendations in front of you, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Macpherson. Members, are there any questions on this item, please? No questions? Okay, members. We've got two recommendations in front of us. Paragraph 1.3, page 6.31. The first recommendation, members, is to draft a proposal that can be circulated to parish and town councils seeking expressions of interest as set out in paragraph 1.19.
Sorry, Chair, you've got 4 recommendations there on the following page.
Councillor Eaves, it's just the recommendations on page 631. That, I think you're looking at the report attached, are you? Yeah,
Apologies.
no problem. Are we going to take them separately? Yeah. All right. Yeah, we have 632. Oh.
It's 631. Those are the recommendations.
No, 631.
That was the.
That was to the.
That was what I just questioned.
Yeah, Emily Hill, could you give the explanation? Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. There are two sets of recommendations, but the executive only needs to consider those on page 631, which are under paragraph 1.3. The other recommendations were for the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. So it's for the Overview and Scrutiny Committee to note the report and then to agree for further information to come back to ONS. So it's just the R3 and R4 that have then been translated into your recommendations to consider tonight, which again, 1.3, actually it's the second paragraph, numbered 1.3, apologies for that oversight, on page 6.3.1. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So members, can I see a show of hands on recommendation 1, please? 4, please.
Are you moving it? You've moved
Oh yeah, I'm moving it, yeah,
I'll
sorry.
second it.
Yeah, sorry. And, right. And those against? And abstentions? Okay. Okay, members, before I move recommendation 2, could we ask the officer if a draft could be provided and from the chair of ONS for a letter? Is that possible?
Yes, of course. Yeah, we're happy to do so. Thank you.
Okay, members, I move that we recommendation 2 from the chair, that the leader of the council writes to the cabinet member for highways, Essex County Council, seeking clarification regarding the provision of a service with withdrawal of funding for the highways rangers. Do I have a seconder?
Seconded.
Thank you, Councillor Hoy. Those in favour? That's unanimous, members. Thank you.
Chair, can I just ask what the result of the first resolution was, please?
It was 4.
4 for, no against, and 4 abstentions. Okay. That's carried. Okay, members, agenda item 7, quarter 1 budget monitoring. Councillor Hoy, could you please introduce this report?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. This report is for the quarter 1 budget monitoring. I think it's quarter 2 is probably due fairly soon, I think, but this is quarter 1. Tim Willis will be going through the report and we'll be taking any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Tim Willis.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Hoy. Just a few things to add to elaborate on the introduction. The report sets out the forecast for revenue and capital budgets for the current financial year. Now the draft accounts for 2022-23, last financial year, have been finalised. The original budget for this year, 23-24, that was approved by Council in February, has been updated to include the reserves that have been transferred between those 2 years. So we knew what the outcome was for last year. Some reserves that weren't used, what we thought we were going to use, we've moved into this year to be used in this year. And that's reflected in the report and in Appendix 1. The forecast for the revenue budget is for £100,000 underspend. The table in paragraph 1.7 provides a breakdown of the underspend, followed by subsequent descriptions of the variances. That's the overspends and underspends against different budget headings. The pay award for this year is still to be finalised, but staffing budgets should be contained within existing budget, we estimate, when factoring in the cost of the pay award as against the level of vacancies. Other major variances that are in the report include £457,000 investment income over budget, so that's positive. We assume separate food waste collection for this year, and if it doesn't start this year, there will be a £300,000 saving. But the cost of recyclers at the materials recycling facility are over budget by about £250,000, we estimate. The cost of Mill Hall is an extra £100,000 over budget. And the forecast overspend in respect of housing benefits is £214,000 over. On capital, the capital programme is also included in Appendix 3, and this suggests that there will be £2.1 million worth of slippage. Slippage just means that we'll spend less than the budget by 2.1 million. It doesn't mean that the money's freed up to be used elsewhere. We assume on the capital programme that it just means that it's held over for when the project is spent at some future point. But 2.1 million is quite a lot, but nearly all of that, about 1.78 million, relates to the asset delivery programme, which is still pending in terms of precisely what goes ahead, which is why we're assuming we won't spend any of that in this financial year. If that changes, we have the money there and we can allocate it accordingly. I'm happy to answer any questions from members. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Members, are there any questions, please? Councillor Gooding?
Can I just ask the officer what reserves were used for the ADP?
Tim?
I'm sorry, Councillor Gooding, I don't know off the top of my head. It's 7 figures. So it's over £1 million. There's quite a lot of reserves that are assumed to be used for the ADP. That reflects the general policy of this council in recent years, which is not to borrow to fund capital projects, but to use available reserves. But obviously, once you've used those reserves, then they're used and they're gone forever. But at the moment, we're assuming that we're using a proportion of reserves, along with some capital receipts to help fund the ADP.
Thank you, Tim. Members, any other questions, please? Okay, members, there is one recommendation set out on page 7.1 of the report. To note the Q1 2023 revenue budget and capital position set out in section 3 below and detailed in appendices 1 to 3. Members, is this noted? Thank you, members. Now we'll move on to agenda item 8, Environmental Health Service Plan for 2023-24. Councillor Lisa Newport, please can you introduce the report?
You have the Environmental Health Service Plan in front of you, and I would ask members to approve the recommendations as set out in the report, recommendation 1 on page 8.1.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions on this item? No. Okay, members, there's one recommendation set out on page 8.1 of the report to approve the Environmental Health Service Plan for 2023-24 attached to the report to comply with the legal requirement for local authorities to have a service plan that covers the food safety and health and safety functions. Do I have a seconder? Yep, Councillor Gooding. Okay, members, those in favour, please raise your hands. That's unanimous. Thank you, members. Right, that item is carried. Okay, agenda item 9, the Modern Slavery Act. Councillor Lisa Newport, would you please introduce this report?
Thank you. The Modern Day Slavery Act report as set out in front of you. I would ask members to agree the recommendation as set out in recommendation 1 of the report, page 9.1.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions, please? No. Okay, members. There is one recommendation set out on page 9.1 of the report. I'll move this recommendation from the chair to agree the draft Modern Slavery Act Transparency Statement 2023-24 and produce an annual transparency statement in accordance with the Act. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Stanley. Those members in favour, please raise your hands. That's carried. Unanimous. Thank you. Okay, members, agenda item 10, Castle Hall. Councillor Mrs. Vilma Wilson, please could you introduce the report?
Thank you, Chair. Before I start, I would just like to apologise for the amendments coming out at quite a late manner, and thank you for accepting this report at late notice. I'd just like to start to say that I'm looking forward to Castle Hall being back in use for the community if these recommendations get accepted, so no pressure anyone. Of the three recommendations, the first one is that notice is served to Fusion Lifestyle to end the contract on managing Castle Hall and Freight House. The reasons given for that is to end the contract on these two assets will enable the council to have much greater control and flexibility on managing its estate, as the two sites are currently mothballed, as we all know. Recommendation 2 asks that a budget of £6,500 to be funded from the Community Investment Plan reserve is allocated to carry out the works required to open Castle Hall. There is a list of the works carried out for that sum to enable Castle Hall to come out of its mothballed state and to be open for use for our community. Recommendation 3, that the delegated authority is granted to the Director of Assets and Investment to finalise the terms of the lease to Rayleigh Community Boxing Club, as outlined in the report Appendix 1. The background information gives you all the further details that I believe that you will need to be able to make a decision on these recommendations. And I ask for your support in passing the recommendation for all three. Thank you.
Do you have a second?
I'll second that.
Councillor Lisa Newport, so second.
Thank you.
Members, are there any questions, please? Councillor Stanley.
Thank you, Chairman. It says that a budget of £6,500 to be funded. Is that the maximum that will be funded, or can it be less than £6,500? So in other words, to readdress that as that a budget to be funded only of £6,500.
Thank you, Councillor Stanley. Are you going to take that,
Well,
Councillor
happy to
Wilson?
take that. The sum of £6,500 is recent quotes given, so I'm confident that that will be a maximum cost.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Members, any other questions? Councillor Gooding?
I'd just like, after reading the report, I'd just like to congratulate you for bringing this through to the council so that we get not only our young people, people with disabilities, and our local residents able to bring this building back into use. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Gooding. Any other questions? No. Okay, members, you've got the three recommendations in front of you. Is everyone happy just to take all those recommendations together? Yeah. Okay, members, those in favour, please raise your hands. That's unanimous, members. Thank you very much. That is carried. Okay, members, I will now be retiring from this meeting on the grounds that I have other registrable interests due to my membership of Rayleigh Town Council. Councillor Chris Stanley will also retire from the meeting. Councillor Hoy will chair the final item of this business. Thank you, members.
Thank you, members. Councillor Lisa Newport, can you please introduce the report?
Thank you, Chair. As you will see the CCTV report in front of you, members, this report sets out the options available for the installation of CCTV in Rayleigh, which I am pleased to bring forward and ask that this committee approves the recommendation presented in option 2. Having considered the report, I believe that this is the best option available to the committee and will mean a timely, cost-effective CCTV system installed in Rayleigh, making best use of a proportion of the Community Safety Fund. I therefore move to accept the recommendation in R1 with the preferred option being option 2.
So that's moved by Councillor Lisa Newport and seconded by Councillor Mrs Gooding. Members, are there any questions? Councillor Eves.
No real questions. I just want to underline the fact that there's been an awful lot of work being put into this over the years. I was involved in the working group earlier on, and it has been quite a tranche of work that's done. The recommendation of option 2, I think, is by far the best option. The association with Brentwood being able to join with them on the monitoring is going to save a fair bit of money. Also, the control of the whole system and the spend being under district council is going to make the whole thing a lot easier, I think, because if we try splitting things up, there are going to be inherent arguments that are going to become as to who's going to pay for what. And I think it just makes this a bit of a no-brainer for me, really, that we go for option 2. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Eves. Any other questions? Right, no more questions then. Members, a motion has been moved and seconded. That motion is that option 2, as outlined in paragraph 3.0 of the report, is agreed. Those members in favour, please raise your hand. Yeah. Those members against, please raise your hands. Those abstaining, I think that's everyone's voted though, so there shouldn't be any abstentions. So for those who want to know, it's 6 for, 1 against, no abstentions. Thank you. Thank you, members. It's gone off again. Thank you, members. That concludes the business for this evening. I declare the meeting closed at 8:07 p.m. Thank you very much.